Okay, we are live on all the platforms. Last week, last week when I went live, I was live on Twitch for about 45 minutes and was live on YouTube for about 3 minutes. Just a little bit of operator error, getting back in the saddle. So we're gonna give folks a minute or two to get in. I don't want to launch just at 11 a.m. Eastern, given that was the start time. So we'll give folks a second to show up, get settled in, buckled up, ready to go before we jump into this. But I am happy. I can't tell you how happy it makes me to be back doing this. And now my camera disappeared. What the flip? I'm having issues with this camera. So all right, we'll go old school. Yeah. Hello down there. Yeah, not my favorite streaming setup, but we'll do it like this. This is life. My very expensive camera is deciding not to behave, so we'll just use the built-in one. Okay, we'll get the party started. Thank you to everyone for showing up here on a Thursday morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you may be. Here to talk about AI and how I'm using it. These are lessons learned that I've had over the past, we'll say, year and a half of building AI powered products. What I'm going to be spending most of my time talking about is for the past month and change, I've been trying to build exclusively using AI. So Claude Code has been my weapon of choice, and I'm digging into the reality of what that is like. So you read about it on the internet and it's magical. I'm here to tell you it's not all magical. Sometimes it's very magical, but it is interesting. So okay, get rolling here. All right. First and foremost, your mileage may vary. My goal with this discussion today is to give you the lessons that I've learned, not advice. I think we're in a very dangerous place in the AI world where any advice that you may get today may not be relevant tomorrow because the speed with which things are changing. So that's the approach that we're taking. The one piece of advice that I will give you, I know I said this isn't advice, is subscribe to Lenny's newsletter. He actually did some real research with all of his readers. So he asked, hey, who out there is vibe coding? What's going on? What are you doing? What does it look like? So actually, what's happening in the real world? What are people doing? We'll talk about the grain of salt with which you should view this after. But what he did find was he had over 1,000 responses in the first 24 hours. I haven't caught up or figured out how many total responses that he got, but in the end, there were 1,000 different things that people were launching. Most of them, actually, interestingly enough, the thing that never crossed my mind was that the number one type of product that was being built was extensions for Chrome to help people get things done. And there are things that were intended for for very narrow use cases, and that seems to be the theme with Lenny's research, is that very narrow use cases to solve a unique targeted problem. And he says, even though that's a reality of where most people are spending time, that doesn't mean it isn't useful to lots of people. So there are items that he talked about in his newsletter that came out, I think, on Monday or Sunday, that talked about there are some of those that are up and running with a couple 100,000 users. So that's really good news. Caveats. Um, the vibe coding that Lenny is talking about, I believe, is different than enterprise dev, which is the approach that I'm trying to take. I'm trying to come at this with a lens of, as a CTO, as a leader of a technology org, and I'm hearing my board, my CEO hammering away like, hey, what AI tools are we using to build product? What does that mean? We can go faster, right? What's going on? What are we using? What are we doing? And there's the vibe coding thing of, hey, I can spin up a prototype, I can make it something, I can get it up and running and share it. Yeah, cool. But what is the reality of building an enterprise level production grade app? What does that look and feel like? So what it didn't feel like was that the responses to Lenny's question, it didn't feel like many people were doing that. So that's where the concern, the question is, and hopefully where I can add some sort of value as I'm trying to make this a reality and stumbling and fumbling through, which I'll share some of the things along the way. So there's some good data. That's the first time that I've seen real hard data of what people are actually doing, what's working. He talks through the tools people are using. So there's a ton of great content there. So even if you have to leave the stream and go sign up for that, it's well worth it, because this isn't the first time that he's done a survey and gotten some really good data back. So definitely follow Lenny. He's doing a good job. Okay. First thing is first. What AI has empowered software engineering? I'll say text generation, which you can organize that text into software products. So it has made the generation of text very easy and very fast. That can be dangerous. So if you don't have guardrails, imagine if you're on a road, a windy road, and you're going faster and faster, that might be a problem. And so I have seen that personally. As I was early in building my app and building my product, I was learning how to drive the car and I was able to go really fast. And there were a couple times where I got going too fast and I eventually had to literally and figuratively slam on the brakes and stop, undo everything, and start over. So that's a thing that you need to be careful of, is that yes, you can go faster, but also fast can be dangerous. So be careful with your newfound speed. You might find yourself going down a ski slope faster than ever with all these trees heading right at you. And what do you do? So just know that that speed can cause challenges. Also, the other speed to be wary of is the speed of change. I've been in the software engineering game for 25 years, and it's always been an industry, especially compared to others, where rate of change is fast. This rate of change is faster than ever. From, months ago, Claude Code didn't exist. Then OpenAI launched their own thing, and then Gemini launched their own thing. So it is a literal arms race that is moving quicker and quicker. So be comfortable that what you know today may not be of value a year from now or 6 months ago. In fact, there's a product that I built, a chatbot for the health space, that the technology I used to build that, as I was releasing it, was outdated. And it took me 3 months to build that. So I realized I'm launching a product and it's antiquated already. I should not be doing it the way I'm doing it now. So that is just the reality. Your code, your approach will get outdated faster than ever. And you just have to be comfortable with that. But in theory, and actually I've proven this out with some of my own code, refactoring is less terrifying than it used to be. Okay, this was the hardest lesson for me and has really helped me accelerate my quality of use when using AI to build product. Is I originally approached it as I was just having a conversation with another really good developer, and we would chat back and forth. They would throw out a plan, I would review it and say, hey, let's tweak this. And it always felt a little bit off. And what I had to learn is that, yes, AI is very good, but AI's context is much smaller than what we can maintain. So we as humans can maintain a larger context of what we are talking about, things we talked about a half hour ago, various things. AI has a much more narrow sliding window of what it can retain and maintain effectively. So I've had to, as anybody in the software world, especially in the agile space, has talked about, making things smaller, 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 smaller. Smaller chunks are easier to deliver. That is truer, if that's a word, than ever with AI. So I have learned to, the common or the popular lingo of today is, there is no prompt engineering, it's context engineering. And some people don't like that term, but I really do believe that is the reality, because this is what I've had to really focus on is, how do I build, shape, and provide the context that is useful and required for AI to do its thing right now with this ask and this task. So there's been a lot of effort I've put in over the past week or so to get better at that, and it's paying off. How have I made that happen? Context augmentation is really how I'm thinking of it. There's tools, there's MCPs, model context protocol. That's a whole separate space we can talk about some other day, that try and build and extend the memory and context with which your AI is working with. Most commonly, that's managed with Markdown files. So there's Markdown files and Markdown files and Markdown files. There are ones that uh, work out. So let's see. One of the most effective ones that I used was with Klein, which is an extension into VS Code, where it has its own memory and it stores, this is what we're talking about, this is the plan, these are my steps, and each one of those is in a markdown file, so that it can keep track of what's going on and provides it with a larger contextual view, because it's not trying to maintain it all within the context with which it's thinking, but it knows, when I need this, I can go to the markdown file and get it. So definitely, um, invest in creating whatever your tool is. So for Claude, there's Claude.md, and that's the one that you start with. That will likely grow bigger than it can handle. In fact, that happened to me yesterday, where Claude Code's like, hey, your Claude MD file is getting bigger than we really prefer. It's going to be hard for us to maintain the context if this gets bigger. So, oh, well, we'll get to that. So the answer was breaking out that context into multiple files, which I'll talk about in a couple slides here. The next thing that has unlocked for me is, I now have 3 different tools doing code reviews for me. So I'm doing most of my code generation in Claude Code. When I create a pull request in GitHub, that triggers a review from Claude itself, from GitHub Copilot, which is built into GitHub, and CodeRabbit. And all 3 of those are built differently. So it's turned out to be, it's very much like submitting a PR for review from different members of your team. They all find different things, and just like members of your team, they all get back to you in different amounts of time. There are some people that get back to you super quick and it's like awesome, and there's some people that it take longer and it's like really a bunch of details and nitpicks and things like that, and you got to figure out what the right answer is. So I've started I've started to leverage AI to check the AI generated code as well. And having this 3-headed monster has really worked well. The most important thing I will say is, the 4th head of that monster is me. So I still go through the code and make sure it all makes sense to me. Number one, to make sure I'm comfortable with everything that's going on, but also I feel like I can provide better context for the next thing that we're building, the more I understand how we're building things and why it's working and what's not working. So having that architectural understanding is very helpful for me, making sure when I'm engineering the context for the next thing that we're building, that I do a good job. Okay, where I'm investing now. So there has been, again, we talked about the speed with which this is changing. So building a custom command in Claude Code. So there's slash commands, just like many CLI tools that you have, but you can build your own. So I've seen a lot of people. This is where I'm starting to build up my own, that have a slash plan that goes through, and there's defined steps of, when I ask you to build a plan, here's how I want you to do it. Here's the output that I expect. Here's all the things that we have to check. So that's a interesting approach to where really what you're doing is you're codifying your standard patterns and practices of this is how we build software. So you can do that from the plan to the execution to the testing to across the board. So that's a thing that can happen. Hooks is a new thing that Claude Code pushed out earlier this week that is interesting because it now can be triggered based on various actions within your project. You can now trigger these commands to run. So one of the things in Visual Studio that has always been nice is that I can set a flag so that whenever I save a file, make sure that we lint and run prettier to make sure the format is good and we haven't broken any basic rules. Claude hasn't been able to do that. But with hooks, we can now say whenever a file is saved, run these commands. And you can imagine the type of chaining that you can do to make that happen and the interesting things that you can create a reality with. And then the indexing, that's the thing that I talk about with my Claude Code, where it started as one file and now I've busted it out into 6 or 7 to where this is the architecture, this is our testing approach, this is how we handle the API and auth and everything that goes along with that. So starting to break that out to be more effective and efficient and be able to allow Claude to maintain the context and memory that's needed there. Late breaking news last night, Claude Code, or the Anthropic team, creators of Claude, have now courses where you can, and actually let me jump over to that tab where they have courses where you can learn. So depending on how you learn, I am a learn by doing kind of guy. So I'm a example or a template or something like that where I can work through and build a project. But if you're a course type person, there's some really great tools that came out yesterday for you to tackle and learn all of this. So again, what's nice is the capability for you to learn however you learn is now becoming a greater reality. We'll get back to this real quick. Okay. And that is my, how did I do? 17 minutes. I'm trying to keep it under 15 minutes. There's times where I get rolling. So I apologize for that, but the floor is yours. Please in Twitch chat or YouTube chat, whichever chat you may be in, please feel free to drop in a question, or if you have any thoughts or opinions, get them out there. Happy to have any dialogue or debate or whatever it might be, whatever you want to tackle. Be comfortable and willing to jump in. Also, if you're on Twitch, you can hit the follow or subscribe, and YouTube subscribe, whatever you want to do. So that way, the next time that we go live, either office hours or when I'm building product, because as I mentioned, I'm building a product and I'm doing as much of that on live stream as possible so that you can see the realities of the challenges that are out there and trying to make this happen. So that's that. I'll take a drink while everybody gets their questions ready. What guidelines? Number one, welcome. What guidelines do I have for dealing with the non-determinism from AI output? So I try and put in as many guardrails as possible. And so the guardrails that I have in place, well, good to see you again. Thanks for joining. It's wonderful to have you. NC DevCon, man, that was a long time ago. So I try and put in as many guardrails as possible. The first guardrail is my own eyes and brain. So I make sure that we start out in planning mode in Claude Code and we build a plan and I understand the plan. So there's a lot of times when it puts together a plan, but I'm unclear about what it actually means with this part of what it says it's going to do. So I ask it for more context in to expand it there. That's where this context management and engineering has become a real challenge for me, because what I found is we think about uh, the context window just kind of shifting right as time moves on. The challenge that I've had is that it'll get really focused on the thing we're talking about now, and then it loses some of the context of what we originally planned. So I'm thinking through, do I need to get better at when I need to refine the plan? We start over with a whole new plan. So I try and make sure the plan is locked and loaded as much as possible. And then I have gotten to a point that when I'm comfortable with the plan, I just let it go and I let it create the files. Now, with that, all of the linting has to work. We don't allow warnings or anything like that. The tests have to run, the test coverage has to be a certain thing. And we have the rules around what should be tested, what shouldn't be tested, so it's clear, because it'll just go and create tests. Another thing you have to do is you really just do have to keep an eye on it, because there have been times where it declared victory and it said most tests are passing. We did it. Good job. In fact, it did it last night. I was working on just wrapping up a feature, and it's like, I did a thing, all green check marks, most tests are passing. And I'm like, well, no, that's not okay. We need all tests to be passing. So I don't think there's any magic other than just having your brain engaged, watching things that are happening, and putting the guardrails in place, just as you would with any newbie developer that you've added as part of your team. So I hope that's what you meant by non determinism. That's one of those terms that people can kind of slang and mean a couple different ways. So hopefully I answered your question, but if not, please fire back and give me a little bit more narrow of context window while we're on the topic of context. So yeah. Yeah, there's a tendency to trust without doubt, and it does get overwhelming, right? Think about as a developer when a peer of yours creates a PR and you look at it and it's like 40 files and you're like, oh my gosh, how am I realistically gonna effectively review this as well? So again, what I've tried to do is just apply the patterns and practices that I found useful in working with humans into working with Claude Code or any other tool. Just keep things small, narrow, well defined, and go from there. That's how we've tried to tackle it. Yeah. Oh no, I'm gonna have to read your. Actually, I could probably pop this Reddit post open and we'll see. Oh my gosh. All right, I'm not going to try and read that on stream, but I will read that later. Thank you for sharing. For those of you, actually, I will let me move this down for. So if you're in Twitch, you can see that. I'll move this to the screen, and I will actually let me paste that into the YouTube chat just for those that are over there, because I don't have my chat window displaying chat across various platforms, so I haven't addressed that issue yet. But yeah, so you've got to again, all of the things that you would do to build and scale an effective engineering organization still make sense, still are required, still are the thing that you have to do. Um, in fact, I would argue they're more important than ever, because as we go back to that speed, the speed with which you can do things means the speed with which you can get off course and go from good to bad is quick. And again, as I said, I've been through that. I've had that same issue where I've had to abandon. Actually, the most recent issue was working through a pull request on a change set that was too big. I was going back and forth with the three PR tools that I had in place for an hour and 40 minutes, and we just kept like putting bad on bad on bad. And as much as I wanted to declare victory and say the feature was done and just move on, I knew that was a bad plan. So I decided to bite the bullet and abandon ship and start from scratch. And that, what that one story was, has turned into, oh my gosh, um, I'm through 4 or 5 of the stories that once were one story, and there still are 3 or 4 more to go to get that done. So yeah, you're right. It is one of those things where you feel like, ooh, I'm so close. Maybe this next challenge is gonna get it done. Yeah. Yeah, it really does require it really does require increased rigor. And without that rigor, and what's nice is you can automate a bunch of it. Um, there's a ton that happens, but even when you automate it, there's still, like, if you search any the Claude code subreddit, there's still, how do I get Claude to like follow my Claude.md rules? There's still a lot of where that happens, and that's where I think things that you can do, if we go back to custom commands, hooks, and indexing, I think those are all ways that you can continue to tighten the guardrails down and enable you to be more successful with limiting what leaks through. So that is a challenge, and the challenge is increased again 100-fold because the speed with which things can be generated. So, but I am overall happy with the progress that I've made as I've learned, and it's been a good ride. I still have a lot to go, um, but it definitely has made a difference, especially in the areas where I'm less comfortable and confident. So I'm naturally, while I can do full stack development, I'm more comfortable. I have a lean towards the back end, so that's more natural, and I can just like bang that out and know it's good. Front end code has always been a weaker side of mine, so it's nice to be able to lean into that and have that help in areas where I know it's just going to be hard for me to knock that out and do it effectively. So okay, well, this is always my favorite part of all of my live Q&A streams. I get to the point where the dialogue and chat dwindles down, and I say, okay, no more questions. I'm gonna shut the live stream off. And historically, we'll see if 2025 is different than 2020, 2019, because that's when I started doing this. Historically, that would trigger a flurry of questions. Ha! There it is. No, I have not. That's a fantastic question, and that's really one of the things that I'm working on. And I actually have a meeting set up with a pretty large firm. I won't share their name, um, in the financial space, that is going all in on trying to make this the norm. So I'm really intrigued to hear what types of tools like this have they built. The custom commands, do they have hooks? What's their context management look like? How are they doing all of that? So I'm interested to see how they're managing and evolving that, given the pace with which this can change. So I'm pretty excited about that discussion. I'll probably have in a couple weeks, and then I'm definitely going to report back on that. But in theory, this is the way I'm thinking of it. In theory, every time you close and reopen Claude, you're onboarding a new developer. So that's why that context management and indexing has become so important as the context of how we build things, because my app has gotten bigger. That's how I've realized I've had to think about it, is that every time we start over, we are starting over. Um, it's no different than if you've used GPT or Claude and you have a, a chat window going and it's like, hey, uh, this has reached its max length. If you want to continue the conversation, you have to start a new chat. And like, oh no, like all this context that we've built up in this one chat window is now gone. You have to start over. So I've tried to think of it as if every time I start with Claude on a daily basis, we're starting new. So I do try and define the context and the prompts effectively to make sure that Claude, who I've come to call bro, um, that's just a thing. So yeah, those chat limits, Scrum Sarge, man, that is an OG. Scrum Sarge, I appreciate you. You've been tuning in my streams for, you know, I think if we were to round up, we'd be talking a decade. So yeah. In fact, it just happened to me yesterday. I was working with Claude and yeah, I had to start a new window. So, but that pain and suffering has forced me, as I said, to get better at shaping the context and the context engineering. So, yeah, it's an interesting place to be. I have been lucky to have been riding the wave of many software engineering waves. You know, the whole web, SaaS space, big data, mobile. This is the new thing. So very happy to be able to sink my teeth in and be at the forefront of learning as all of this is happening. So, and I appreciate you all showing up and being along for the ride and trying to learn together. So, yeah. Okay. So the question from Scrum Sarge on Twitch is, do you find that you frequently use the same or similar context? So as I've been building the product, I've had to learn how to drag this giant context with me with each discussion, with each session that I have of making sure that everything that we've learned, and as we go back to this, humans are more effective at maintaining the context over a longer period of time. So what I've had to learn is how to make sure that when we're starting a new feature, I can dump the context on Claude and it can process it. Um, so yeah, so for me, it has been context augmentation. So for Claude, it ships, air quote, ships with Claude MD, and um, two two things I've had to do is I actually ended up breaking that out into. Actually, I'll just show you guys. So if we look, we have Claude MD, which covers the basics, but also points to all these various docs of architecture. This is where we talk about it. Auth, this is the file we talk about it in. This is our development flow. This is the Git workflow. This is our testing. Here's our tech stacks. This is what front end looks like. This is how the back end works. That's how it all works. So each one of these files has its own context that we then bake into it. And what I've had to do is I've just realized the most important thing I can do is just be relentless, and every prompt use Claude.md. Use Claude.md. Also, a couple other things that have been important. If you are using Claude or Claude Code, there are multiple levels with which it will think. So there's think hard, think harder, and ultra think. And what that appears to do is that I don't know how it works under the covers, but my experimentation of seeing what the difference is in using those three has been, it seems to be, it takes more trips thinking about it. And actually, it's done some interesting things where it's processing and it's talking you through what it's thinking about, and it says, "Oh, wait a minute, that might be a mistake," and replans things out. So um, I just assumed that it was always referencing the context and memory that we had given it in the markdown files, but I it just wasn't consistent enough. So I had to force it and say, like, in every prompt, use Claude MD, refer to Claude MD. Claude MD has all the answers that you need, right? All this, like, I don't know what the magic words are there yet. I keep experimenting to figure out what those are. So, um, yeah, that's how I'm tackling that. Scrum Sarge, anytime, buddy. Anytime. You know how to get a hold of me. Happy to help. Happy to chat about whatever. All right, we're doing pretty good, folks. We're 36 minutes in. We've had some questions. This fires me up, folks. You don't know how happy it makes me. I opened up the session with excitement and joy that these bring me. So I'm so happy to be rolling on this again. Yeah. So Scrum Sarge is asking if I found that Claude does a good job of referencing Claude MD and then the reference docs too. I don't really know, but there's a lot of activity out there with people that are wrestling with this problem where they are experimenting with different words to put. So, like, if we go back to Claude.md, it says all files must be referenced when working with Claude code. So, oh, ad break. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry for the Twitch folks. I wonder if can I just turn those off, like, explicitly? All right, well, I flipped a switch. 30 more seconds. Oh, gosh. All right, so sorry to our YouTube viewers that are like, "What's going on?" Okay, uh, Twitch went into commercial break. Yeah, so part of the problem is monetization on Twitch has become an issue that you can either have pre-roll ads whenever anybody joins your stream. If you don't have ads automatically running throughout the stream, then it will load ads before people get into your stream if they're not subscribed. So that instantly turns people off from joining your stream. And as a small streamer, but I don't know. So yeah, so it's pre-roll ads or ads in the middle of daily life. Okay, so this question about how do we get Claude MD to make sure it uses the files every time, I would say there's no definitive answer. And so what I've done is mention that all files must be referenced when working with Claude code. There are a ton of people that have like used very stern, strong language, like threatening Claude that if you don't reference these, bad things will happen. So I wouldn't say there's a defined set of keywords that make this happen, but I assure you everybody's wrestling with this. So I assume the speed with which we are progressing, that it is going to become a standard. We can count on it every time. That's why one of the things that I'm excited about is, oh, yeah, um, the custom commands and hooks. Are there things we can do and put in place to force that to happen, to force that to become a reality? So that's where some of my experimentation and research is going, just to figure out how to solve that problem. So yeah, there doesn't seem to be a unified answer of this is how you get Claude to actually use your Markdown files every time. That's why I have resorted and just resigned to the fact that every prompt I have to tell it use Claude.md. So yeah, frustrating. But that's what happens when you're like on the forefront of tech. Stuff's never as easy as you'd like it to be. You give it time to grow up a little bit, and we'll get there. So patience. We'll get there. Okay. Do the thing we do. Any more questions? Yeah. That Scrum Sarge, you nailed it. So you do have a choice in life. You can deal with the pain of being on the forefront of this technology and all of the challenges. Fire away with those questions. Bring as many as you like. Um, you can either deal with the pain of learning as it evolves, or you can deal with the pain of having to play catch up. So I have fought very hard in how I've structured my career to find or create a job for myself where I'm building on the new tech, so that when it's 5 years from now and it's the norm and everybody's expecting that I have, that I've been there and done that. So yeah, so the question is, given the issues with AI and the benefits I get right now, how worth it is it for me? The reason I'm doing this is because I found great value for me personally. I'm not suggesting this is how you shape your career or the things that you do, but for me personally, I have always tried to be on the forefront of figuring things out, so that when it becomes the norm, I'm already an expert. I've already built the thing in ways people are trying to build things now. That is frustrating and hard, and a lot of undocumented approaches. Just as we talked about, we just talked about Claude Code, and like how do you get it to reference its context and memory every time? And there's no good clear answer for that. But I would rather, as Scrum Sarge said, I would rather fight that battle than fight the battle of trying to play catch up. Um, Now, if we, so um, I have taken a very, hey, thanks for the follow. I have taken a very, I've taken a very strong stance of I am building products right now on my own using AI exclusively. So I am forcing myself to go through that pain to figure it out. There have been times where I'm like, oh, I know the answer. I can just go bang it out in VS Code and be done. Um, so, but I fought that temptation of like, no, I've got to figure this out. So this is this is one of those things of how I've shaped my career, and it's worked for me, but it is without a doubt a bumpier road. In fact, I was just talking to somebody yesterday about, there's the concept in the business world of being a fast follower. And you think about, if you're trying to forge a path through a jungle and you're that first person, you've got that machete and it's you against the forest and the jungle and all those plants and animals that you're trying to get through. And you're chopping away at that for days, weeks. You forged a path and then somebody comes running along right behind you and it's like, hey, I'm here. Man, looks like you're working really hard. So there is that challenge, but for me personally, it definitely has been worth being that um, intrepid machete wielder out in the jungle of AI to figure it out. Now, that's me personally. Let's put CTO hat on. CTO hat, and I've got a team of 20 engineers. What do we do? Do we demand AI adoption and usage? No. I think there are really tremendous benefits where AI can be beneficial, especially in the PR space. So I like what CodeRabbit is doing. I like the Claude Code PR review. GitHub does a really good job. So I've been really happy with that. Again, what I think of is I think of where is AI really good? All right. Scrum Sarge. Thanks, man. Coming back with Prime. Scrum Sarge. Good to have you back. It is really good at consuming or generating text. And you think about a PR, a big PR, and you're throwing all this text and the context needed to process and organize and scan and do all that stuff. It's really good at that. Again, I think if you keep it narrow, tight focus, it can be very good. So narrow features. Again, I don't think that I would as a CTO, I don't think I would say everybody works with Claude Code. I think Claude Code should be a tool in your tool belt. But I don't think it would go much further than that. Because we need to build all the guardrails, and because again, as we go back to the speed being dangerous, you take that speed and you multiply that speed times the number of people in your team and things can get out of control. So you have to make sure that all of your guardrails are in place and you do have that rigor that sets up so that that dangerous speed with which you can now wield code doesn't get you into trouble. So I'm getting back to you there, back 5430. Yeah. Yeah, it's again, for me personally, I I um I find that it's been worthwhile to be on the forefront. Painful, but worthwhile. Yeah. All right. Nearing the end, we have time for probably one more. Then I'll have to shut it down because I do have something at the top of the hour that I got to be at. So um, I do thank everybody, A, for being here, B, for engaging in chat. Few things make me happier in my business life than these live streams. I thank you for the follow, and Scrumsard for the subscribe. Means the world to me. Wonderful to be back having chats with you. And again, follow, subscribe, and I'll be doing this more often. Well, actually, we're going to do these normally on Thursdays. We'll see how it goes. We might bust them out like we did a couple times a week. We'll see how progress goes. But I am building app in real time, so if you really get excited about it, you can tune in and you can watch me argue with Claude and figure out how to get things going the right way. So, all right, I'm going to call it a day. Thanks again. I appreciate everybody for being here and joining the chat and subscribes and follows. All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week, if not sooner.